Hello. Nice to
Hi.
I mean, you, Miachel. Thank you so much for squeeze your time in while squeeze us in your schedule.
Mhm,
So we've done this a couple of times, but it's always good to have a introduction
mhm.
for people who might not know you or who doesn't know all aspect of your work. So
Mhm.
would you mind to introduce yourself to some of the people may listening later? What do you do? What do you offer? And maybe just a little bit of your background.
I love that. Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Miachel Pruett. I'm a still life director and photographer here in Austin, Texas. And I love working with commercial brands. Everyone from Sephora to Whole Foods to Kin Euphorics. And the classes that I taught this time were teaching how to take a still photograph and with a little bit of Photoshop love, turn it into a stop motion. And yeah, that's a little bit about
Yeah,
me.
that's awesome. Thank you so much. So we have a couple of questions
Great.
from along. So the first one is about Capture One. So I think it's Elise. So Elise asked, what is the main advantage of using Capture One for color work as opposed to Photoshop? Also, would you recommend any courses or resources for learning how to work with Capture One? Currently tethering with Lightroom, we all know that it's kind of clunky, tethering with Lightroom.
Yeah, thanks, Elise. That's a great question. So to reiterate what you were saying, you're asking, in terms of color editing capability, what's the advantage of using Capture One? And then also, instead of Photoshop, and then also, are there any courses I recommend outside of this to get more acquainted with Capture One? Yeah, definitely. I feel like as someone who started out using Lightroom, that was what I used for a couple years until Lightroom got just a little too buggy for tethered use. And I mean, as you know, when you're shooting still life, shooting tethered is a must. It's you can't, not shoot it. And so that was what got me started into using Capture One. And I really, and now I prefer that. In addition to, I find that the color editing capabilities in Capture One are so nuanced that now that I've really built up a speedy retouching process, I find that Capture One really makes it easy. And honestly, the way that I learned is through the online tutorials by Capture One. I think that's one of the things I really, enjoy about them is they have wonderful free courses, and they also continue to release free courses and update their software, and then also release new courses like showing what the software does. So I highly recommend, going to Capture One site and checking out the videos that they have. They're short, sweet, they're very easy to understand and navigate. And no, I'm not affiliated with them, and I don't get paid for them to say this, although maybe I should. This is really just my honest opinion, based on, my 10 years of being in a studio and doing photography. So
Yeah, totally. In terms of resources, I don't know, Elise, if you ever purchased our photography course. Weekend Creative what was actually teaching their whole process for still life images or stop motion. Actually, yeah, both using Capture One. So they have like the whole process, how they set it up, and you'll be able to see a lot of the behind the scenes. I don't know if you have that course. If you already have that course, you can totally just dive in for their course. I think it's about an hour. It's pretty comprehensive. Show their framework by using Capture One. But if you don't have it, we may open up that course later on if you're interested. But yeah, that's just another resources I know. Also, follow-up questions. It seems like, because I watched your course too, it seems like you don't really use Lightroom as part of your practice anymore. Or do you, unless you're batch working photos, I guess.
no, that's a great question. Oh, also, I wanted to touch on what you just said. Yeah, I feel like back to Elisa's question, I feel like in the course that I share, the first part of each section, I do start in Capture One and kind of walk you through my process of how I do color editing. And so I hope that's also very valuable. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. And then Claire, to answer your question about Lightroom, no, I don't use it anymore. I feel like Capture One is where I do the bulk of, I start there, I do the tethered shooting, and then I do my first and second pass of retouching, which is very light. And then if something needs a lot of extra love, or if I'm making a stop motion, then I'll bring the raw files into Photoshop. But yeah, for the most part, or actually for everything, I kind of retired Lightroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And nothing against it. If some people use it, that's great. It's just, Capture One on Photoshop, that's the workflow I find to be the fastest, nimblest
Yeah,
way to.
totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I feel like you want it to be as less steps as you can. If
Yes.
if you are already tethering on Capture One, and Capture One has all you need to do some light retouches, and there's no need to import that into Lightroom and later on, because you definitely need a Photoshop to do detailed selection work and
Yeah.
any sort of like basic animation work. So I feel like Lightroom is not necessary in that workflow, but I do know that if you are working with batch of photos, say like it's not necessary, product photographies, maybe portraits or events, then that's, Lightroom comes in handy with batch working like that without too many retouchings or selections, detailed work. But yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I realize a lot of product photographers don't really utilize Lightroom much for that reason. So number two question from Elise. Sharpness. Your images are so beautiful, sharp, and crisp. Do you have any tips for focusing and the sharpness? And could you please share what camera equipment you're working with?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So to answer Elise's question, she's asking about, how to increase the sharpness of your images so they feel really crisp. And I would say, I definitely have some hacks of how to like do that in post. What I find that I really love to do is to make it as sharp as possible, starting out from the very get-go. And you can do that in twofold, in two different ways. One, starting out with quality equipment. I know that's hard to hear because, high quality equipment is a really big investment. I mean, let's not, mince words here. It's like, photography is really expensive. Like it took me like, I don't know, I've been doing this 10 years and like, it took me a long time to get the lens and equipment that I really like. That said, if for some reason you feel like, your equipment isn't cutting anymore, but really high-end bodies and lens aren't for you, definitely check out your local camera shop because they rent equipment. If you're in the New York area, when I lived there, man, I loved renting from Adorama. I feel like it's such a great company and like the rentals are like very affordable and they definitely allowed me to create really high quality work with good lens on the cheap before I could afford anything. And then likewise, I don't know if you're in Austin, but Precision Camera has a great rental system. And I still use them occasionally. Like if before I think about purchasing a lens, I always rent it to see like, is this something that I would actually use? Is this, amenable to my workflow, and things like that. And then specifically the lens that I really love to use is the Canon 5DS. I feel like, when I'm shooting for billboards, like it has like,
or the
sorry. For body. Yeah. For body. Yeah, the Canon 5DS, I love it. I feel like, 50 megapixels, it gets really crisp things that I can blow up for my clients if they ask. And then as far as lenses go, sorry, real quick. And then also about the Canon 5DS, it's really a studio camera, I think. It's really meant for still life. I feel like from what I've researched and from my usage, it's not really a camera that's meant to be on the move, like it's not meant to capture action shots. It's really nice for these like slow on-set moments. Hope that's helpful. And then going into lenses specifically, I love my 85, my Canon 85. I think it's amazing. It's really nice. And then for macro shots, I love the 105, the Canon 105. I shoot everything Canon, if you haven't noticed. Yeah. The Canon 105, I love it. And then for slightly wider shots on like tablescapes, usually for food and drink, I'll switch to my 35. And I like it. It's not quite as crisp as the first two. But yeah, that's what I love. Especially love the 85.
I love I love 85 and 35. That's what I have. I have
right on.
Both lenses, but I don't have it in Canon. I have in Sigma.
Oh,
I have
cool.
Sigma lenses. I mean, they're pretty good. The only thing is 85 is huge. So the Sigma one I think it's even bigger, but it's really big, very bulky. So it's tiring. So definitely it's some sort of like, if you are on the go, it's hard to bring that lens.
Yeah, totally. And definitely.
Gonna put down tripod.
Totally, you're like walk around with this huge camera. And Claire, that's another great point. Like, if you feel like, at least if you're interested in Canon, and Canon is just, it's a big money investment. Sigma also makes great variations of that for a lot less money. And then I don't know if you've ever tried this, but if you buy a used lens, like from Adorama or Precision, like those work really well too. The warranty works a little differently, but you still get really good lens. So there's a ways to like, have really good equipment, but like for less expensive. Yeah. And then, so that's the first thing. I said there were two ways I like to make sure images are super crisp before editing. One is, your equipment, it makes a difference. And then two, the other thing I do is actually something that Weekend Creative did, or shared how to do in one of the earlier Moodle courses. And that is when you're tethered in live view, or when you're tethered, shooting tethered in Capture One, turn on the live view and then zoom into the product wherever you're focusing in and like gently adjust the focus. And you would really be surprised about what your eye misses. And I feel like that really elevates your photography to another level, because when you look at a photo, and I can tell when it's slightly out of focus, even really nice big brand names. It just takes the quality down, so that's one thing that's, it seems small, but it makes such a big difference down the line. Turn on live view in Capture One. I'm not sure if Lightroom has an equivalent, probably, but in Capture One, if you're in the program, I'm trying to like visually like walk through this for anyone who's listening and watching. You'll see like the big capture button, and then to the left of that you'll see a button that has a video camera icon. Click that and it will pull up the live view of what you're actually seeing. And then this is really important, you want to zoom in, I think it's 3 or 4 times, and then you see like the magnified version of the spot you're looking at, and that is where you want to adjust. I never adjust on the first initial screen because it's too zoomed out. What you want to do is you want to zoom in and then adjust focus. A lot of steps, but really helpful.
Totally. I feel like lenses and equipments are just very it's a personal preference. I know people, because we talk to a lot of our photographers by now, everybody has different preferences. I know a few of them use zoom lenses because they just feel like they don't need fixed lenses, like you and I. So and also the body, then I think everybody uses different bodies. They all look very crisp and sharp, and so
Yeah,
I think going
that's a
back
good
to
point.
what I'm saying, that it's important to test it out by renting it first, because you just don't know what might work for you, might not work for them. So
Totally. And like when I was to your point about like using a zoom lens, I feel like when I was shooting more lifestyle and shooting a lot of architecture, like for restaurant openings, um, I found like the 24, is it 2470? I think, yeah.
yeah,
I loved taking that to restaurants, especially in New York, where like the space is really small and you got to get like a nice wide shot. Like that was
yeah.
wonderful. And and also when like I was shooting on location, like doing lifestyle, like I find a zoom lens super helpful because I'm able to react in the moment and be a lot more nimble. Versus when I'm on set, I feel like the pace is really snappy, but I have that time to switch out a lens and get that one ideal shot in the moment. And
Yeah.
so in my workflow, I find that, yeah, when I'm on set, like, or when I'm in the studio, like I zoom lenses, I don't need them, and they're not quite as crisp. I feel like I'm not hating on zoom lenses. I'm just saying, like, for my workflow, yeah, clearly, like you were saying, I feel like zoom lenses, not my preference, but everyone's
um
different.
the shots you did work on for our course, is
Yeah,
that 85 or 35?
that's a great question. I believe the one of the berries spilling out was 85. The one of the melon, like the close tight shop on the Moudelier pedestal, was the macro lens. And then the third one, of the nectarines, I believe that was also 85. Yeah, yeah, again, I love the 85 because I feel like there's a little less distortion than the 35. So yeah, so I kind of favor that one. Um,
You have a preferred camera settings for your studio, I mean still life shots,
that's a great question. In
you
terms of,
always
oh,
or do you
oh,
always change your camera settings, depends on the project?
that's a good question. You mean like in terms of camera settings, like, do I have like a favorite
Like,
aperture or a favorite like,
yes,
so,
yes, like the
oh,
combination.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. Well, first of all, I always shoot raw. They're like, if you're not doing raw, start now. Consider
Yeah.
this your sign. um, and then in terms of preferences for ISO, I keep it as low as possible. Usually 100, sometimes 400. If I really want to go high, but yeah, I mean, to me, I feel like there's no reason to go above that. And then in terms of aperture, it really depends. I feel like if I'm getting, um, yeah, it really depends on the project. I feel like, yeah, it's hard to elaborate more than that. I feel like if I really want a nice tight focus, I'll go like down to 3.5 or 5, 5 f-stop, versus if it's larger, I'll go anywhere from like 10 to 16, maybe go up to 22. Yeah, it really just
That's really
depends.
good range. It really depends. Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Um, I
totally.
do feel like your still life of photography is one of the I think because you mainly focus on life food and beverages. So
Mhm.
I do think your shots, or just overall feel of your still life for food and beverages, is really, really nice. It's one of the best I've seen out there. And yeah, it's
Thanks,
like my
Claire.
personal. Yeah. And
Thank you.
I think you have another question about reflective
Oh,
mirror
real
surface.
quick. Sorry, I realized we had been talking, but I didn't answer the last part of Elisa's last question, which was in terms of retouching, like adding a little clarity. What one thing I like to do, like Claire and I just talked about, like, using good equipment, and then also like doing the live view. But then in post, if I want it to be a little bit crisper, what I'll do is I'll adjust the clarity, and then also the I think it's called, it's not called sharpness in Capture One. You know what? If you don't mind, I'm going to pull up Capture One right now and just double check that what I'm saying is accurate. But yeah, I like including increasing the clarity. Sorry, I'm a little word to turn around. Here, let's see. Okay, so if you go to, oh, it's called, they call it sharpening in Capture One. I'm not quite sure what the Lightroom equivalent of that is, but yeah, in Capture One, if I want to increase the sharpness, I'll go to sharpening and take the top dial up to about 250, maybe 500 if I want it to be like really, really crisp. But yeah, I don't know. I hope that helps, Elise. Great question. Yeah.
So the last question is, working with mirror, it's tricky. How do you manage highly reflective surfaces and lighting in camera? Any tips on keeping the mirror clean from unwanted reflections from BTS?
Yeah, that's a great question, Elise.
So, I can read that question again if you didn't. So
yeah.
working with mirrors is tricky. How do you manage highly reflective surfaces and lighting in camera? Any tips on keeping the mirror clean from unwanted reflections from BTS?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love working with mirrors. I feel like they add this really nice richness to an image, like you see the subtle reflection in it, and it just amplifies the photo or the video. In terms of working with the reflections, I think it's just, first of all, it's just being aware. I feel like as a photographer and a director, you're hyper aware of how the lighting affects all objects. Like you pay super close attention to where the shadow is being cast. Where is the light actually hitting the set? Does it need to be a little bit to the left? Does it need to be a little to the middle? And then taking that focus and adapting it to the reflections, like noticing, okay, the mirror is now reflecting onto the seamless in the background. So what I'll do is, instead of having the background be flush with the tabletop, I'll move it back a couple feet. So, the mirror isn't casting a reflective glare on it. Or in the case of the stair step video I made for the Moodlia case, I actually, I had a nectarine on top of a tiny circular glass. I had it was on top of like the pedestal, which was on top of a glass, and it ended up casting a really weird reflective glare onto the stair step. I wish I had the photo to like show you guys. Yeah, but if you see the stair step photo, you'll just see what I'm saying. It's like nectarines, and then there are two smaller nectarine pieces in front. And I saw the reflection happening on the stair step. And I tried a few options moving around the nectarine in the foreground to play with the reflective. And I just really liked the positioning of where it was at in the foreground. And so I decided to run with it. And then in post, I edited out the reflection on top of the stair step. So in my mind, it's just paying attention, in terms of using a mirror. And, if you can move a couple objects around to reduce that glare, go for it. But in this case, I found that wasn't really possible on set. So I just did a little bit of light retouching afterward.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Where do you normally get your mirrors?
Oh, great question. Let's see. The tiny ones I got from Amazon. Not proud of that, but I know those are tiny ones. And then the large ones, oh my God, my favorite place is Lowe's, the hardware store. They sell like great mirrors. Yeah, I think they're not cheap, but I think they're affordable for how often I use them. I feel like they're very high quality. And just a tip for storing them, what I like to do is they come with little plastic ends on them to protect the corners, because once totally. I feel like once the corners get nicked, it's just a matter of time before the mirror breaks. Definitely had that happen. But until I did this, so what I take is like the plastic tips they come with, I take gaffer tape and I kind of just tape them in place. So they're always present. And you don't see them because, I mean, if you're on a shoot, you're not showing the ends of a mirror anyway. But yeah, exactly. And then what it also does is it keeps the mirror from ever, it keeps the edges of a mirror from ever touching the ground, which is really causes faults and breakage later. So yeah, tip for storing it away. And then also, oh, sorry, what'd you say?
No, I said great tip.
Yeah. And then also, I store it in the cardboard packaging it comes in. So, you know, nothing scratches or touches the surface when I'm not using it. Yeah. So
I've learned it from other photographer who's using a lot of mirrors. He told me he purchased his Walmart and it's pretty cheap.
great.
So that's another place if you want to look for mirrors. So that's all Elise's questions.
Thanks, Elise.
And we have a couple more questions. I noticed that your work before even you do any post productions, and the photo you use is already pretty nice. Like even if you post it as it is, it's still really beautiful photo. So I wonder if the trick is how you do your lighting setup, or I don't know, like would you want to share how to get as close as for the shot as close as what you wanted, so you don't have to do tons of retouching later on?
Yeah, totally. I feel like I totally agree. I feel like, I mean, I feel like I agree in that, like the photos you see once they're retouched are not so different than what you see on when I'm actually on set, because I feel like, and I've talked with other photographers who feel the same way. It's like your retouching shouldn't take hours and hours on end. Like the photo you shoot should be pretty similar to how it ends up in retouching, you know, for your sake, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to think of what attributes that. I think just you know, focusing on the lighting and paying a lot of attention to the color palette beforehand. You know, before I go into a shot, I really have a mind of how the colors on set are affecting each other, and how it will look in post. You know, whether it's let's see, like if I'm working with different blues, I make sure that all of the tones are somewhat similar. Let's see, or I'm trying to think. I think in color a lot. Like if you look at my house, it's like very colorful, but it doesn't feel overwhelming because I like to think of how colors affect each other. And so I think that really comes across on set. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, in terms of lighting, I also I sometimes use strobe lighting, but I really love continuous lighting. And yeah, I think one of the things that helps with that is I start with a more bluish tinted white light. I feel like a lot of lights you can adjust the temperature in them. To me, what I shoot products. And so the products need to look as true to life as possible. And so sometimes there'll be moody lighting, or, you know, have like a red tint or a bluish tint. But for the most part, I need the products to look like they were shot in white light. And so the light that I shoot the continuous lighting with is like a very white light with like a slight bluish tint. So I hope that helps. Yeah.
Fascinating, because you said you sometimes love to use continuous light to shoot your still life images. And you found out that works as well as if you're using a strobe.
Yeah, I think I like them both. I just feel like because I shoot more video now, continuous lighting works better for me. But I know, I think you can create really beautiful images using both types of setups. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting because I don't I know I talked to Helen because she also do a bit more videos now, and she just shoot in very high like 8K quality videos, and then she just grab because the quality is really good, so she just grab the one of the frame from the videos and
Mhm.
use that as a still life shot, which is
There you
already
go.
pretty but
Yeah.
it's like it's shooting 8K, it's like pretty out there.
Enormous. 8K is
um,
like
yes,
enormous. Yeah.
it's
That's cool.
large.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I've also had experiences with using continuous light, shooting on set, but not for product, for like human beings. So larger set, and the strobe, I mean the continuous light just doesn't like models face as the same as the strobe light. So therefore, the skin tone and didn't look as good as if we were going as for a strobe light. So I don't know. I guess yeah, that's just the experience I had. The
Mhm.
skin tone didn't look as what we as bright or as warmer. It
Uh,
was kind of
Interesting.
grayish. Yeah. Anyways, so
Oh,
it was harder to
yeah.
editing the post because the raw
Really.
footage we worked with was not exactly what we wanted. So that goes just saying that if you can light the set as close as what you wanted in the final, it's better to do that than trying to figure out how to edit it in the post because sometimes it's just simply not reachable. It's very
Yeah,
hard to edit. Yeah.
totally. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I haven't had that experience with because the models I shoot, I also shoot on continuous light, and I don't know, I think maybe it's just like the specific light that I have, but I feel like
What
the
do you
warmth
use
does
for your
come through.
continuous light?
It's the for some of the shots, it's the EGO continuous light. I can send, yeah. I don't remember the exact name of it, which is awful. But because it's in my studio. Like, yeah. um,
But would you say that's more of like on the affordable side or more on more of a not affordable side of the
um,
or
honestly, I bought it a while ago, and so I can't. I wish I could answer that, and I honestly don't remember what I paid for it. I
that's
know that's not helpful.
oh
Yeah.
all right. Let's there's another question about food and beverages photography. Do
Great.
you have any sort of um what's like the difference between when you shoot food and the beverages
Mhm.
vs just packaging products? Do you shoot them differently, or is there anything people should pay attention to if they want to get into more of a food and beverages? Because I feel like that's your like bread and butter, what you do
Yeah.
really well.
Totally. That's a great question. Okay, so they're asking, I shoot like beauty and products, also food
Mhm.
and beverage. And so what's the main difference between shooting food and beverage and purely products? I feel like, that's a great question.
Or is there any styling difference?
Hmm,
Styling like tricks or techniques then you notice because shooting liquid or glassware or food. I think you before we talked a little bit about this. I think you told me you try to um, use the food really fresh so it
mm.
doesn't the color or it
Yeah.
doesn't yeah.
I forgot we talked about that on Instagram Live. Yeah. Yeah, one of the tips I find that's really helpful for working with food is to it might sound backwards, but I work either to create a set or with the prop stylist on set to create the scene ahead of time. And then I put in the food at the last second, because that way it looks really crisp. I feel like the props or the food stylist has taken so much time to make sure that the food looks amazing. And it's, especially if it's meat centric, I think it's only available for like 5 minutes. You kind of have 5 minutes to get that really tight shot. Which, sometimes is why you make like multiples of one dish, because, the 5 minutes runs out. But yeah, but if you're like by yourself, no stylist, and you're doing everything, I recommend setting up the entire scene, like placing the napkins, trying out different plates, and then put a plate as like a plain plate as a placeholder until the food comes. And when you feel like the image is like 90% there, then put the food in and take it the rest of the 10%. And I think it helps because in terms of food and drink, timing is everything. And also the same with some beauty shots. I feel like I've worked with it extensively with beauty now, and sometimes you have some really sweet details that will completely disappear in about like 2 minutes. Like if we use like a dropper to like place different things, or if we're creating some nice foam out of like a cleanser, it disappears. And so it's important to like be ready for that and set up everything ahead of time.
Do you, when you work with beauty product, do you normally say if you need like a scoop of the product and you want to like lay it out on the flat surfaces? Sorry.
Right. It like brings me to attention. I'm like,
and then so in terms of like scooping out the product, have you ever done that with beauty or skincare brands?
Yeah, I love that. I actually really like doing the smears. I was working with one talented prop stylist, but like for some reason, I don't know, maybe she wasn't feeling as confident that day, but I was like, yeah, I'm more than happy to like do the smears with like the lotion. I love that. I think it's super fun. And I think it's just about practice and confidence. And and knowing that, if you don't get it right the first time, you wipe it off, you spray it, and you try again. And definitely just practice. I think if you're really interested in getting into beauty, that I think some of my favorite beauty shots that I've done are those like really nice tight textural shots. So just take like, I don't know, if you have time, like take 2 hours, buy some cheap beauty products that are discounted, in the in like the drugstore, and then and like make a little mini shoot out of it, like try doing some smears, try doing a few drops, because it does take experience, but it's not unattainable. Like anyone could do it.
I love that. I love you're doing the smearing effect by yourself. And I love you said the very tight texture shot is where you find out the best for working with skincare or beauty products, because I do love like the textures you have on your shot, even for some food and beverages. Drinks, I can see like the bubbles. It was just do you in terms of editing textures like that, do you increasing the texture for the images, or is there any specific editing you found is really helpful when you want to really like a good textures?
Great question. Totally. I find that when I light the set to give the best texture quality. I think that's a similarity that I shoot between like when I shoot beauty and when I shoot food. Like I make sure that I light from the side, and I shoot a little bit lower, so then you get like really deeper textures. And on the editing side, what I like to do is I increase the clarity. I usually increase the clarity overall for the image, but if I want like really, really good texture in one area and I felt like I want a little extra something, I'll, use a brush and increase the clarity in that one area.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just needs a little bit. I feel like if you're lighting it right, and you're really focusing on those shadows, and your clarity is really crisp, and your focus is really crisp, then you don't need that much clarity. Yeah. Like we were saying earlier, like shoot it as much as possible, like in the moment, and then the retouching is just like a little boost. You're not trying to create something from scratch.
Yeah. So when you say you shoot it lower, do you mean like the space between camera and the set is,
I mean,
you mean
yeah,
shoot
good
it
question.
lower?
I feel like instead of like, if this is the tabletop, and the product is down here, instead of shooting the light here, I'll like drop the stand down a little bit and shoot it a little bit lower. And so what it does, it just makes the shadows more dramatic. Yeah, which I find is really nice when you're doing kind of like swirls and smears. Yeah. And sometimes in food, I feel like in food, I don't recommend taking the light down too low, because then you'll see a lot of shadows from plates. And sometimes it can be pretty, and I don't know, there's a fine line. Like it could be really nice because you get like a long, beautiful shadow out of a glass and you get that nice like light play, but then also you might get really long shadows from a plate. So yeah, it's just about, playing with it and finding your personal preference.
Cool. So next question. Do you use one light or two lights in your set?
Great question. I prefer using one light, and then using a bounce. Yeah, depending on what it is. Yeah.
And then even when you have models on set, those shots is also just one light too.
Yeah, I mean, I used to shoot two lights in the past. Oh, actually, that's not true. Sometimes I do use two lights, but what I'll do is I have one key light, I have a bounce or a reflector, a large scale, very, very big. And then what I do sometimes is if there's a model or like liquid being dropped, then I'll use like a rim light. So I'll put like a light in the back to catch like a little bit of outline on their face. This is a good tip. If you're like pouring liquid or something, whether it's beauty or a drink, I think rim light is really nice there because you catch like the light coming through the liquid from behind. And so the liquid feels less flat. Like you could definitely shoot, if you're pouring liquid, you can shoot it from the front and it will look nice. But I think that if it's transparent liquid of any kind, whether it's like kind of more gelatinous, like a beauty product, or whether it's like a clear drink, I definitely recommend experimenting with some rim lighting. I think it really adds a nice element to the photo.
Interesting. Okay, that's cool technique. I didn't know you could do that.
It's fun.
Yeah. I also love some shots I've seen on your Instagram where you have models, and I love how rich their skin tone is. Do you just play around with oranges on their skin tones, or do you have like anything else you found out it's really nice when you're editing a person's or people's skin tones?
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of, I really try to, everyone that walks on set, like I want their skin to be really rich. And it's interesting. I think I just do it, and verbalizing it like on the spot is like a little tricky. I don't know. I feel like I light them very intentionally. Again, like when I shoot with a continuous light, and I make sure that it looks sorry, I'm kind of
sure
no.
You make sure when you shoot you light them correctly, so I assume probably the raw images, their skin tones are already pretty rich and nice, so you don't have to retouch.
Totally. I feel like that's probably not the answer like people want to hear, but I just like, I don't know, if you light things correctly the first time, you don't have to do much editing later. I think sometimes
do you use white light or like
I find white light is really nice. I think in post I really love colorful images, and so I will bump the saturation a little bit, but yeah, I think another thing I do is I really love shooting, like I really love photographing people the same way I do food, drink, and beauty. And so I do feature stronger shadows. And I think maybe that contrast is something that brings out the richness in their skin tone. I feel like when I shoot a person, I never want them to feel flat. I want them to feel like rich and three-dimensional. Yeah. And so I guess that, helps out in color too. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gathering the light situation on your setup is almost always from the side, one big light, and maybe a few or down here to
Totally.
balance some of the light. Yeah. Okay. I think that's what I wanted to know, because I noticed the skin always looks glorious on your models. I know they don't come with exactly thing like that. It must be something you did to make it a really nice and warm and just so rich. And I think it's very, it makes the models very flattering, and also makes the images and the vibes very welcoming and warm. So it's really good. I feel like a lot of brands like that kind of vibes, warm and welcoming. And then yeah, so I realize even your own portraits, your skin tone is very nice and rich. And you're right, now I'm looking at it, it's a bit more contrasty. So
yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Claire.
I just love how your photo look. So next questions. Oh, this is not really a question. I just love how you did the sparkles. I was watching it. Of course, I'm like, oh, I wasn't sure if this is just something, there's like a tool or filter, or not filter, or I didn't know, basically what I'm trying to say, I didn't know you actually had to draw it out. So I thought it was like a something you can just like grab it and put it there and maybe do the frames and stuff. But you actually draw out those sparkles, which is really cool. I think that's why your sparkles looks different, because you do like 1, 2, 3, 4. There's different size, and then the sparkles I've seen out there is more of like just like a little star with 4 sides. So that's why your sparkles look different. Yeah.
Yeah. I think like one of the fun things, like whoever like took the course and like learned to make sparkles, I feel like I know it's also nice to play with different shapes. Like the 4 thing, I think I did that for one of the Kimmy Forex videos, and just kind of playing with the shape. So it doesn't feel the same when you look across the internet. I feel like if everyone's making the exact same thing, you kind of start to gloss over it. And so I don't know, I think it's fine. It's fun to like make your own, and then also experiment with like the height, the number of prongs on the star, like play with it and have fun.
Yeah, that was so good. So good. Well, that's all the question I have. But I think before you go, is there anything you want to share with people who might want to get into more of a product or food and beverages photography, which is what you do the best? In my opinion, I love your, food and beverages and skincares. But I mean, basically you do is great. But do you have basically any tips and advice if people want to get into more of food and beverages, or even skincare and beauty?
I feel like the way that I became a photographer was I started working with first at the very, very beginning, before I could do any photography, and it wasn't good. I did work for free. And then, like once you feel like you're established, like I looked around and I started meeting people in Brooklyn and working with really, really small companies, and not charging very much, but developing my style and learning on set. And I don't know, companies might not want to hear this, but like I love pushing the boundaries on set and being paid to do it. And I feel like if you are interested in starting out, play before and after work, during your lunch hour. And once you feel like you have a handle on certain techniques, reach out to local brands. I feel like there are so many, beautiful, interesting people like making their own products these days. And so, look around for those, go to your like local store and see like what brands are being made next door, reach out to the company and see if they're interested in some images, and shoot for them and experiment with the lighting. And if you feel like you're not comfortable enough in product photography, maybe offer to do it for free. But I thrive on pressure and deadlines. And so I find that while I love experimenting in my own time, at the very beginning when I was just doing product photography, I loved that pressure of working for a brand and knowing that I had to deliver for them. I think it made my work so much better, versus like, there is like such a nice sense of playfulness when I'm doing a personal project, but I feel like when I'm really trying to get better at something, I find that like, oh man, let that pressure work for you.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And also I find the best way to learn is by doing. I love like recommending the Capture One courses, Photoshop courses, but honestly, I can't watch a video. I have to be doing something while the video is playing, like doing the example. And I really recommend like giving yourself a difficult project where the skills are greater than what you have, and learn by doing. I think it really, it forces you to
I
like.
think you also give us starter files too, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, when you're watching her course, Miachel's course, you can download the starter file so you can go. I hope you have two screens so that way it's easier. One screen you can, on your one screen you can watch the course, the other one you can edit it. I think that's also how I learn, by doing things. I can't remember anything if I'm just purely watching something. I have to do it too. So I think it's really helpful with those starter files you got from the downloadable in the course.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I feel like, like I said, like I can't learn without doing something. So I figured anyone who's taking my course, like I really hope the PSD files and the raw files are helpful, because you can do everything alongside while I'm teaching you in the video.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank
Check
you
out
so
the course.
much. Really appreciate you and your time. And I hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to do the Q&A live. I loved it. It's really nice.
It was fun. Yeah. Well, I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye.